Last night, James O'Keefe and his organization, Project Veritas, released a major undercover report from Pfizer. Scientists saying that natural immunity is better than vaccine immunity. Now, there's been an ongoing debate about this. Some NBA players have said they don't want to get vaccinated because they have natural immunity. And many people, like Rand Paul, have questioned why there's a vaccine mandate when natural immunity does provide protection. Several studies have come out, many of which have said that's inconclusive. They don't know exactly for sure if natural immunity is better. However, there are many studies saying, yeah, natural immunity is in fact better. And many of these studies actually say, or some of them, that natural immunity followed by vaccination is quite possibly the best protection. And that may be the case, but it is still being debated in the public sphere. If you were to follow the science, like actually read the literature yourself and then try to understand this, you'd probably come to a rather nuanced position where you're like, yeah, natural immunity is good. Natural immunity with vaccine is the best, but natural immunity means you have to get COVID in the first place. So getting the vaccine makes sense in that capacity. In the end, I think we're missing the big picture here in this debate. I don't think we should be debating how the mandates are being carried out. I think we should be debating why we're having mandates, period. In the end, the conversation ultimately will lead to, okay, well, fine, we'll have the mandates. You win, everybody. We'll just do antibody tests or negative testing as well, which I still think is wrong because it still requires you to present your papers. However, I do think this is huge on the part of Project Veritas because this is exposing Big Pharma's agenda. These scientists in this expose are saying straight up it's all about the money. And while the science may actually say vaccines are good, well, I will say this. I'm not here to give you medical advice. You guys know that. Find a trusted doctor. And if you think it's hard to do, find someone who watches Project Veritas. Just find a doctor you trust. It's weird that there's so much pushback to that, but it is what it is. Ultimately, here's what I mean to say. I think it's fairly obvious when you look at the data that natural immunity plus vaccination would provide you with the best protection. In the Veritas expose, the scientist actually says, one of them, that when you get COVID, your body produces antibodies to a bunch of different parts of the virus, whereas the mRNA vaccine is just the spike protein. So, yeah, it would make sense that natural immunity is better. It would also then make sense that natural immunity plus vaccination is the best. Why then do you have this big push? Why then do you have the censorship? Which brings me to the point of the story. Why are they censoring this? This is not controversial. I mean, look, I have this article from Yahoo News that I think is rather impressive. It's literally just from Yahoo News, and normally they aggregate. Where does natural immunity stand in the fight over vaccine mandates? And they basically give the nuance saying, yeah, there are studies that say natural immunity is great and better than the vaccine. So if Yahoo News is saying this, if we have, check this out, from The Hill, study shows Pfizer vaccine effectiveness declines after 6 months. Then we have this from nature.com. COVID vaccine immunity is waning. How much does that matter? This is The Hill and this is nature.com. If we can't talk about these stories, then we are beyond in trouble. And yeah, YouTube might actually take this down because they say, oh, you can't talk about it. I don't care. Okay. I'm not going to sit here and pander to the censors when we have facts, right here. Now, a lot of people are like, Tim, you won't say a name. Dude, YouTube telling me I can't say a name of a guy who's on the news anymore is not the same as me being able to say nature.com. COVID vaccine immunity is waning. Or The Hill, study shows Pfizer vaccine declines. This is important then, because it may be that a lot of the push we're seeing is advertising. What do I mean by that? Look, companies advertise on networks. Pfizer probably buys millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising. If stories start getting shared that make it sound like their product's no good, well, then they'll pull their advertising. Why should we advertise on a platform where people are disparaging us and pushing these stories? And then YouTube and Facebook and the networks are like, guys, chill out on the talking smack about Pfizer. Look, if this is the reality of it, this is the reality of it. We've seen the Israel studies. This is why they've been recommending boosters. So I will say this. I do not live in a world where I immediately assume that the mainstream narrative always is wrong, because you can often conflate the leftist establishment with mainstream or authoritative narrative. Here's what I mean by that. We are getting booster shots for those, I believe it's 65 and up. Okay, so that's available. And people who are immunocompromised. That's specifically because effectiveness wanes. Now, for some reason, the establishment media, big tech oligarchs and left would censor people for saying that. And so what I mean to say is, you can read The Hill and they'll tell you effectiveness is waning. You can read the news from Israel and they'll tell you this. They're doing booster shots. But the establishment, the mainstream media often, and big tech social media don't want you to know. Here's the proof. I shouldn't even need to give you proof. It's obvious. This is Eric Spracklin with Project Veritas says, breaking, Instagram has now deleted this video from the Project Veritas page with over 1.3 million views. We have other reports from individuals saying that when they posted this story about Pfizer, they have gotten suspended for it. This individual says 7 days. Another person says they posted it to Instagram. This morning, goes against the community guidelines and removed. Okay, so this is the issue. The studies and the science are not identical to the mainstream narrative always and to big tech. But what happens is, I'll give you this example. Merck, for instance. Merck makes ivermectin. And I have to say, ivermectin is not approved as a COVID treatment. It's used for treating river blindness. It is not. It is used to deworm horses, but the media lies to you when they call it horse dewormer. Now, YouTube doesn't want people recommending this, okay? And I'm not here to recommend anything. I think you really should legitimately go talk to a trusted medical professional. But the point is, when you talk about something that is widely available, when you talk about the studies, you could get in trouble. There are many studies touting the effectiveness of ivermectin. There's several several studies and overviews that are critical of these reports, and they're saying that their studies saying it's inconclusive. So I'm not here to pass judgment on ivermectin. I don't know, genuinely, I don't. I've heard the arguments from both sides. I will say this: Merck, the large pharmaceutical company that makes ivermectin, recently has announced that they're producing their own COVID therapeutic, which they are submitting for emergency use authorization. My only question there is, how many studies have been done on this one pill? Well, according to the Reuters report that I was reading, I believe it was Reuters, there was one study suggesting that it could reduce hospitalizations by 50%. Why then didn't Merck submit ivermectin for emergency use authorization? I don't know. I think look, you're not going to talk to a sane, rational person and show them those stories and have them conclude that they're going to trust a major capitalistic pharmaceutical endeavor. Corporatistic, I should say, capitalism. It's unfair to rope in the corrupt with free market enterprise, but it depends on your definition of capitalism. These big companies, they want to make money, okay? In this expose from James O'Keefe, you actually hear them say that they're running on COVID. Look at it. He says, I work for an evil corporation. Our organization is run on COVID money. He says something like we made $15 billion last year. How many people there are being turned into millionaires and billionaires over this? Because you have no choice. That's the vaccine mandate. It is part of the largest transfer of wealth from the working class into the hands of massive multinational corporations. It wasn't just the lockdowns, which killed the mom and pop shops and then forced people to go to Amazon or Walmart. It's also now our tax dollars and mandates that individuals go and get this medical product from a big pharmaceutical company. Now, listen, I say it over and over again. Man, I think vaccines are great. And especially, really, you should read about mRNA technology because it's brilliant. People always like to tout the founder, the creator of mRNA and his positions. And I'm like, yeah, the dude made an awesome thing. I think it's fantastic. I don't think they're unsafe. I've certainly seen the stories. Yes, adverse events do happen. That's why VAERS exists in the first place, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. I know a lot of people say I repeat this, in every segment I do, because not everybody watches every segment. So forgive me if you have heard this. But there are a lot of people that I believe just generally distrust vaccines. Okay, well, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I don't think there's a grand conspiracy to, like Utopia or Kingsman. Like I don't see it. I do think that Pfizer is like, we're going to get paid tonight, baby. Yeah, people want to make money. And so the company says, look, we've got the data. The vaccines are safe and effective. Their effectiveness is waning according to this one story. So now they're recommending boosters. There's a lot of money being made there. Okay. And so while the vaccine may be effective for a certain amount of time, like 6 months, I think perhaps so then maybe you don't want to get COVID immunity, or maybe you don't want to get natural immunity because it means getting COVID, which is scary. And yeah, people I've known, we've had people here get it and they sound scary. So maybe you do want to get the vaccine, but I'll tell you this, even if it is good and recommended, you have to recognize that there are massive corporate interests in mandating this. I oppose the mandates. I think if you want to go to the doctor can prescribe you a whole range of things you've never heard of, and you just trust your doctor. See, that's another thing, too. I think people need to understand. Look, you go to the doctor, and you're like, doctor, my butt hurts. And the doctor says, here's phanodindazole. And you're like, thanks, doc. And you don't even know what it is. So some people do Google search and do research, and I think it's important that you actually look into the medications you're being prescribed, because sometimes you can get something that you might be allergic to. You can get something that might, like, hey, maybe you engage in scuba diving, and this medication says do not scuba dive, after taking this medication. You really got to know that stuff. Also, a lot of it says don't drink alcohol. You really got to know that stuff if you want to be safe. That's why I do recommend talking to doctors about counterindications, because at the very least, they're going to have the FDA inserts. They're going to have information on potential side effects. Not every doctor is a good doctor. Not every plumber is a good plumber. Check this out. I'll read you some of this, but I want to talk about natural immunity because I think, we get the gist of what we're learning from the Veritas expose. But here's some quotes. Nick Carl, a scientist at Pfizer, says, when somebody is naturally immune, like they got COVID, they probably have more antibodies against the virus. When you actually get the virus, you're going to start producing antibodies against multiple pieces of the virus. So your antibodies are probably better at that point than the COVID vaccination. Chris Kroos said, you're protected for longer if you have natural COVID antibodies compared to the COVID vaccine. I work for an evil corporation. Our organization is run on COVID money. Rahul Kandke, probably pronouncing it wrong. If you have COVID antibodies built up, you should be able to prove that you have those built up. Now, here's why I think this is important. Learning this from actual Pfizer scientists who work at the company, who are giving their candid opinions, I think is very important because there is a, quote, fight over natural immunity and vaccine mandates. Now, this article from Yahoo News, I think, is actually does a really good job of explaining what's going on. But I do think that you need the Project Veritas story to understand that you have Pfizer scientists who disagree with the mainstream narrative. They're under threat of NDA, and they are outright telling people in private, yes, natural immunity is good. Well, that should be a major argument, a major debate point when talking about natural immunity. That being said, I want to stress that point. Natural immunity means getting COVID. Okay, I personally don't want to get COVID. I can't speak for anybody else. You live your life the way you want to live your life, and you make the choices for yourself. I am liberty-minded, and I don't think the government should be stepping in and mandating any of this stuff. But that being said, I'm not sure getting COVID is a good thing. However, the point here is, if you did end up getting it, you should be able to cite natural immunity. I certainly think so. But you see where this argument leads us? We're no longer talking about the mandates in general. We're now saying, Bill de Blasio, you allow people to do antibody tests. He'll go, aw, shucks. Okay, I guess. Show me your papers. No mandates. No mandates, okay? That being said, when it comes to why people don't want to get the vaccine if they've already gotten it, regardless of mandates, I understand that point. Take a look at the story from Yahoo News. They say among some of the arguments against the COVID-19 vaccine mandates is that immunity from a previous COVID infection should count as an alternative to vaccination. The topic has received a lot of attention due to the NBA. Last week, NBA player Jonathan Isaac said, he wouldn't get the vaccine because of natural immunity. The natural immunity argument has also emerged as a potential legal challenge to states and federally mandated vaccination policies. In New York, a vaccine mandate for more than 650,000 hospital and nursing home workers has prompted a flurry of lawsuits across the state, brought by nurses and others who are seeking various exemptions, including one for people who have had COVID-19. We don't do this for anything else. Look, COVID is bad, but it's not the apocalypse. The main issue, man, and this is really tough, I do not like the establishment authoritarian narrative. I do not like the establishment authoritarians. I do not like the mandates. But COVID is a novel virus, which means it will rapidly spread through the population, which means even with, I think it's 0.2 or 0.02. I don't know the percentage, of the death rate. I think it's like double the flu. You will see a lot more death than the flu because people have some varying degrees of immunity from two different strains of the flu. The same was not true for COVID. And also, that being said, yeah, maybe lab leak, all that stuff. I don't know. The point is, two things can be true at once. COVID is honestly kind of scary. Wash your hands, take it seriously. But that doesn't mean the government should have the authority to dictate over our lives and force us to undergo medical procedures. Sorry. I just will not accept that. Now, when it comes to things that are substantially deadlier, I think everyone has their line, like airborne Ebola. Yeah, or as a zombie plague. We'd probably lock ourselves in our basement. COVID is bad. And a lot of people are willing to take the risks because risk percentage plays a role in how much people are willing to give up in terms of freedoms. But here's what they say. What does scientific evidence say about which offers better protection, natural immunity or vaccine immunity? The answer, like most things, is complicated. Dr. Monica Gandhi, an infectious disease specialist and professor of medicine at University of California, San Francisco, says the data available is mixed, with some studies pointing to natural immunity being as effective as some of the vaccines, and others suggesting the opposite. When data is mixed, we say we have equipoise and we keep on studying. I have tremendous respect for that statement. Honestly, we keep on studying. That's great. Now, a lot of people don't trust big tech and big pharma, and they say, oh, science is bought and paid for. The left has been saying that forever. The left has been saying climate change science is bought and paid for. So I don't know. That's why I weigh it all. I don't just immediately assume every study is evil, corrupt. I try to take a look at it. Then I try and talk to some experts, get some varying opinions, and do my best. It's nigh impossible, mind you, but you gotta research. They say the CDC, however, is recommending the COVID-19 vaccine for everyone who is eligible, regardless of whether they've been infected with the coronavirus. Now, let me read. They say, according to the CDC and health experts supporting the guidance, one reason is that research has not yet shown how long protection from the virus lasts after recovering from COVID-19. In addition, the agency says one of its recent studies, which went through a rigorous multi-level clearance process, showed that vaccination offers higher protection than a previous coronavirus infection. The peer-reviewed study of 246 Kentucky residents concluded unvaccinated people who already had COVID-19 were more than 2 times as likely than fully vaccinated people to get COVID-19 again. However, they go on to mention other studies. Proponents of including natural immunity in the mandates equation are also basing their argument on scientific data. They point to certain studies over the past year that have shown that natural immunity offers significant protection against reinfection. These include studies out of the Cleveland Clinic, Washington University, and Israel. The Israel study, however, has been the one that's received the most attention. According to the 778,658 person study, which is, let me just remind you, massively larger than 246 people, people who recovered from prior infection and remained unvaccinated were 27 times less likely to experience symptomatic reinfection from the Delta variant when compared to those who had not been infected and received 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. Now, there's differences here. One, this study was not peer-reviewed, which it means something. It does, but it still is a study. And they're specifically referring to the mRNA Pfizer vaccine, whereas the other one was, I think, just in general, vaccinated or not. Look, I can't tell you what is right or what is wrong. I do think it is good that Yahoo is just presenting the data and then saying, figure it out. By all means, if you don't have a medical professional that you know and trust, then you've got a lot of problems, because what happens if you get I was skateboarding and I think I strained or damaged, what is it? The meniscus, the lateral meniscus. Has been a long time. The thing in my knee, some cartilage or joint in my knee was strained. So it was like swelling. And so the doctor prescribed me some like anti-inflammatory steroid or something. I was like, okay, doc, I have no idea what this is. I have no idea. Methylprednisolone or something. I don't know. It's been a long time. It's a skateboarding injury, and they were like, yeah, you don't want the swelling to get bad, so you want it to go down. And what should I have just trusted the doctor to give me the right thing? Well, yeah, what am I supposed to do? I don't know what this stuff is. I Googled it, I looked it up. This is a long time ago. I was 16 or 17 at the time. But yeah, it resulted in swelling. My knee was, I fell on my knee skating, I was trying to do, I think, a kickflip backside nose grind, and I slipped out, if you know what that is. And so anyway, I digress. I say, okay, doc, patch me up, send me on my way. Now we have a lot of people who distrust the establishment to the point where they don't trust their own doctors anymore. Do a good search, figure it out. I can respect Yahoo News presenting the different information. When we see a lot of people talk about the ivermectin studies, and they say it's good news, and they recommend it. I'm not going to recommend anything, okay? It's not FDA approved for use in treating COVID, and there are questions about why that may be. A lot of people are distrustful. But I'll say it. I said it once. I'll say it again. Just because I don't trust the neocon Democratic establishment and their media apparatus doesn't mean I will just immediately trust what I hear from, say, Brett Weinstein or anybody else. Now, I certainly trust Brett Weinstein, and I don't trust the media. If Brett Weinstein told me to, like, quick duck, I would. If the mainstream media said it, I'd probably think about it for a second and maybe even, I don't know. Look, the point is, if someone gave me advice and it was someone like Brett Weinstein, I'd be more inclined to take it than I would from the mainstream media. But that doesn't mean that on issues of medical stuff that I don't know about, I would blindly trust anybody. In the end, I think we have to just, make the decisions for ourselves, do our research, make sure we're using trusted sources. And I don't mean trusted establishment sources like I use NewsGuard. No, I mean, like, look, there's a lot of bunk websites and creepy crackpot conspiracy websites. You got to be careful of the stuff. I've got family members that send me these articles from Freedom, Patriot, Press, Adventure, info, and I'm like, what is this? You always got to track down the root source. I do trust mainstream media more than I trust those websites, but I certainly trust independent media way more than I trust independent media, and more importantly, I don't need to trust any of it when I can look to the source material myself. And that's the important thing you have to do. You can read these studies. You can actually take a look. And this can help you inform you when you're going to make these important decisions. In the end, all of this is still pointing towards approved vaccine mandates, which I say are wrong. I do think that this is one of the most important stories. I mean, Project Veritas is hitting it out of the park consistently. This is seriously important to understand. First, I think we know the profit motive of big corporations. To have employees at Pfizer saying this, I think is important. But I do think you need to keep in mind 3 people at Pfizer. It's difficult. I mean, that's 3 sources. Normally in journalism, 3 sources saying a thing typically is enough to go to print. Nowadays, they don't do that. They say an anonymous source told us X and we believe it. What Veritas got here is weight on the scale. Definitive, perfect. Look, man, these are trying times and things are hard to know. It's hard to know what's true and it's hard to know who to trust. But I'll tell you this. Getting an inside view at Pfizer and their opinions, wow, that certainly does put some weight on the scales in this natural immunity debate. As much as that is important and earth-shattering information, I just want to stress, do not lose sight of what's happening. This is great work from Project Veritas, but we should not be saying the conversation is between this kind of vax mandate and that kind of vax mandate. The conversation should be, you can talk to your doctor, and there should be no vax mandate because people shouldn't be forced to undergo a test or any kind of medical treatment unless their doctor is the one who advised them. They have informed consent and they make the choice for themselves. Because if they can mandate this, they can mandate anything. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.